Welcome to Leadership Conversations with Miles Toulmin. We believe leadership is a posture, not a position. And in the same way postures can be improved, leaders can grow. We hope these conversations will encourage, equip, and inspire you as a Christian leader to bring hope and vision to your community during this time of global complexity. Thanks for tuning in to Leadership Conversations with Miles Toulmin.
Hi everyone, welcome to this episode of Leadership Conversations. I'm Miles Toulmin, the Vicar of Holy Trinity Bukit Bintang here in Kuala Lumpur, and I'm the Executive Director of Alpha Asia Pacific. We believe that leadership is a posture, not a position. And just as we can work to improve our posture, so we can grow as leaders. And one way in which we do that is hearing the stories of other people who have gone before us and been servant leaders for the Lord in amazing ways. And I'm so excited to introduce today's guest. Father Francis Teo is a Roman Catholic priest, and he's a member of the Missionary Community of St. Paul the Apostle, MCSPA. He spent much of his life as a missionary in Kenya, and MCSPA have 10 missions in Kenya, Ethiopia, Malawi, and South Sudan. And they also have members in Mexico, Colombia, and the Philippines, which is where Father Francis now resides in Quezon City, where he runs and oversees a formation house, preparing ordinands for ministry and those who feel a call to the mission field. Father Francis, welcome. Thank you for so much for being with us today.
Thanks, Miles, and thank you for your invitation. Really, the honor is mine.
No, it's an absolute pleasure to speak with you in this episode. Now, you're originally from Malaysia, correct? In Malacca?
Yes, I was born in Malacca.
And I believe that you left home at, I think, aged 14 to go and study in Singapore. And then you got a place at the very prestigious National University of Singapore to read law. And it was whilst you were at university there that you felt the beginnings of a call to the mission field. Could you tell us a little bit about that and how it happened?
Okay. I was, I left my parents' home when I was 14 years old. I went to Singapore with that scholarship, and I studied at St. Joseph's Institution. Right, and I must mention SJI, St. Joseph's Institution, because it really helped to form many of my perspectives. It set the planted the seeds in me for the years to come later. Yeah, but from there, then I went on to do the A levels at the Hwa Chong Junior College and on to the NUS, the National University of Singapore, to read law. At that age, 14, 15, 16, we wanted to try everything, and experience everything possible. And certainly, even love, And there was a time where I questioned very much my religious beliefs. I really put my relationship with God to test, okay? It was those tumultuous years of my life. So anyway, after when I was in law school, that was I really loved law, and I wanted to when I went in there, I wanted to really go through it and come out as a lawyer and practice as a lawyer. But what I was doing during those years in the university, the holiday period, I would go out of the country. So, for instance, the first year, 3-month holiday, I worked hard in order to save some money and to travel to Turkey. Then the second year, I desired to go to Pakistan, to hitchhike, to trek in the northwest frontier province. That part of Pakistan where the Karakoram Highway is. Now, this is not the new one. It's the old Karakoram Highway all the way to the Kunjarab Pass on the border with China. And it was a wild, wild journey. But those trips opened my eyes to the world and to the different peoples, After all those trips, when I was coming back to my room in at the university hall, I felt a deep depression because it was hard. After spending months in the open, trekking and camping and hitchhiking, and then you return to four walls, it was oppressive, really, right? And then the routine and all that routine of life, that really it hit me very hard, and it killed my spirit. I felt I was suffocating. Right? I questioned many things that I had taken for granted all my life, relationships, my goals in life, even God, right? And I really longed for open spaces and the freedom to be able to move. It caused this emptiness in me, and I realized that emptiness. I felt it very deeply, but at the same time, I could not pinpoint and say exactly what it was. Right? What was causing it? Right? It made me depressed. It made me lose interest in my studies, and even in the prospects of life as a lawyer. Right? All that, it's eventually changed.
This is when you then decided to write to missions in Africa. Is that right?
That's right. And then I thought, well, since I was going to go through Africa, perhaps I could, work a few months, volunteer a few months at some place, some mission. So that's when I asked a friend of mine who was studying medicine at the Royal College of Surgeons in Dublin to send me a list of missions in Africa. So a priest who was a lecturer at that in the faculty of medicine there, in tropical medicine actually, he gave her a list of 23 missions. And that priest, Father Robert McCabe, I would meet him years later in Africa. Imagine, it was amazing. Wow. When I look at it. Yeah. So Father Robert McCabe gave to my friend the list, and I wrote to all 23 missions. I remember writing exactly the same thing on, we used aerograms at that time, yeah, and sent it off. And I thought, now let's see. I'm sure everyone will be fighting to have somebody from Singapore come by to teach something. But no one replied. No one replied except for Bishop John Mahan, an Irishman from the Diocese of Lodwar in northern Kenya. Before leaving, though, I remember buying an atlas, a wall map, okay, of Africa for my parents. I framed it and I hung it in my parents' home so that they would at least be able to follow, which countries I was passing through. That was the plan. Everything planned out to the smallest detail. And then on the personal side, I found that I didn't know what I was getting myself into, but I thought I wouldn't need most of the things that I had. So I gave away everything that I had, everything, all clothes and books and everything. It was very liberating, to give away all those things. And what I thought most precious in my life, I kept in a little carton box, and that box, I kept it in my parents' home, and I said, leave it here until I come back. And that's the only thing I had. And, what seems important to us then, eventually, it's not so important, right? 34 years on, I have not even opened that box in my parents' home, right? It's still there under the staircase in the storage. I must say that both my parents, they were very concerned about me, right? He was very concerned about where I was heading to. What was I going to do with my life professionally and existentially? To go to Africa? My goodness. What future, they asked, was I carving out from all that? No. So they tried to advise and to guide me and all that, but I must say that they never pushed. They never stopped me from doing what I wanted. And years later, I would understand that my dad, when he saw that I was convinced of something, then he would relent and he would let go. And if he ever voiced any doubts, it was because he saw an uncertainty in me.
Back to look after your father when he was very ill towards the end of his life. Is that right? And
that was later.
And he shared a little bit of his sort of perspective with you. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. This was in years later, 2 years after I was ordained a priest. I think it was in 1988 or 89. I'm not sure now, but it was about a month before my dad passed away, and I was asked to come back. Because we weren't sure how long more he would live. So being me, I still said, no, it was not necessary, to go. And the priest in charge of us back in Kenya, Father Paco, he said, Francis, drop everything and go. And out of obedience, I did that. I dropped everything and went. And I'm glad I went, because I went and I spent a whole month with my dad in the hospital. I remember one night when I was, lying down next to him on the chair, and I saw him slowly stand up because of the pain that he felt in his legs and his waist. And he moved, he shuffled very slowly up to the mirror, looked at himself in the mirror. And with one eye, I saw that, and I said, Pa, are you all right? And then he nodded his head, and he shuffled back to the bed, sat down, and he told me, he said, son, if I had to start my life all over again, he said, I would be a priest like you. I was very moved, because for a long time, my dad was not happy about me going on to be a priest, and they was, overwhelmed with emotion. I didn't know what to say. I just blurted out, if you did, I wouldn't exist, He went on and he said, I realize now that everything that we do is in vain. When you are at the end of life, you realize that the only thing that matters is the good that you have done. And I think that's something that it taught me a great lesson, and something that I would apply in my life, always. Yeah. So anyway, that was the story of my dad, and a few days later he passed away.
If you may take us back to the Turkana region, Lodwar, you've turned up, you've begun to serve with Bishop John, but then you mentioned Father Paco, who I know was quite an inspiration on your life, who sort of modeled incarnational mission to you, and in many ways became a role model and a mentor. Tell us a little bit about what was it in Father Paco that was so special, and the impact that he had on your ministry.
Okay. He called constantly men and women to leave everything behind and to follow Christ in a life of service. He kept doing that, right? And he called me too, and that was how it hit me, and I began to think seriously about a vocation to the priesthood, all right, to a missionary life. So it was thanks to him.
The ministry was both deeply spiritual, but also very practical. You built schools and hospitals and sanitation. And did you just learn on the job how to do this, or?
Yeah. No, well, yes, we did. We started small agricultural schemes, agricultural projects, small scale, right? And in order to introduce more sustained food resources for the people also. Okay? And so we work quite a lot in education, but also in conflict resolution. Because along the border areas of Kenya, on that part of Kenya, Turkana borders Ethiopia, South Sudan, and Uganda. And all along the borders, these are regions of conflict. So the church plays a very instrumental role to bring the tribes together and to sit down and to have a dialogue and to work for peace. Peace is not just the absence of war, peace as in development, okay? There being development. So the church is a very big player in that. And so there was, those were fascinating times. I mean, I really enjoyed it. And I look back now, I just to think about life there then. We were living in tents because there were no mission houses then. We couldn't, we built that eventually, but we were living in tents. And we would go out in tents, and in a strip of land between the Omo River, which is a very long river that flows all across Ethiopia and opens out into Lake Turkana, and the shore of Lake Turkana. And we would be camping there in the evening. And then the river, suddenly we'd hear a huge splashing sound, and we look up and we see a tilapia, this fish, about 30 kilos, leaping out into the waters, and a crocodile following up, opening up to catch it. It was amazing. And the tribal people, the Dasanage with guns, with the AK-47s would be camped all around us just to protect us. Okay. And I think we were also, we felt very safe.
Father Francis, this is inspirational stuff because, incarnational mission, as you're describing, is sometimes we think that means just turning up and being present with those in need, particularly maybe those who have material needs. But you've described incarnational mission really as more than that. It's not meeting the immediate needs. It's seeing some of the systemic problems that lie behind them and trying to fix them. But also, incarnational mission literally means placing yourself in the crossfire between two opposing parties and being Christ in the crossfire, as it were. Christ in the crossfire. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called children of God. And not all of us might be in the wilderness, in the mission field, but it could be that we have family members who are arguing or work colleagues who are arguing, and there's something about incarnationally showing up and being a peacemaker that is part of what it means to be Christ's hands and feet in a place. It's very, very challenging stuff, but thank you. You've clearly over the years faced some hardships, both. Well, I know, for example, you've been carjacked, abducted, beaten in the crossfire, lots of different, and there are times probably when the work felt so hard or overwhelming that you must have doubted, am I really making a difference or doing the right thing? How did you persevere and continue in those moments of hardship or doubt?
Honestly, in all these 34 years, I cannot remember a moment when I seriously doubted my vocation and the life that I had chosen to live. I can't remember a moment when I doubted my vocation. I may have doubted other things, but never that. Being there and being a missionary with the missionary community of St. Paul the Apostle, of leaving everything and following Father Paco into what I did not know. I never doubted. I can't remember a moment when I doubted that. Uncertainties, yes, there have been moments of uncertainties. And when faced before such moments of uncertainty, of course, prayer is needed. No? Prayer with God and with those in my community, right? And I guess it's very important to surrender to God, trusting that He will see us through. He will open a way. When I was carjacked and beaten up for caught for one day, I still think about it, and things still come to mind. And I thought that that's it. I wouldn't go on, but in the end, I had to place everything in God's hands, and I guess that's what it is. There are times when we don't have a say anymore. There are times when it is God who will have a say, not us.
Father Francis, may I ask you one last question, if I might, which is, I have a Kenyan friend, and he always jokes with me, and he says, God lives in Africa and occasionally visits elsewhere. It's a very spiritual continent, and the African church is growing and growing rapidly. You have been part of the story of the African church for decades. What do you think that we, and by we I mean the church outside of Africa. What do you think that we can learn from the African church?
That's a very good question. I think the most important thing that we can learn from the African church is the joy in its expression, the joy. You know, here in Malaysia or in the Philippines, as a priest, I celebrate Mass, and everyone's looking at the watch. 1 hour, Father, 1 hour. And if you do it in 45 minutes, that's a good priest, you know. But in Africa, if we finished the whole Eucharist and the celebration under 1 hour, we get scolded. We get scolded. It's, how can you do it so fast? We've walked 4 hours to come here and you finish it in 1 hour. No way, Father, go on. When you go to some of the places and you see how staid and how solemn things are, and well, maybe it's the culture of the place, but really, to be Christians, we have to be joyful. And what more when we are expressing our love and our devotion to God. We need to be joyful in that expression. And I think it's one of the things that we can learn from the African church. And for me personally, what I've learned, not just from the African church, but from Africa itself, is the humanity of people. I mean, you walk anywhere and people greet you. Good morning, hello. People are not so caught up in their own little worlds. Walls are not so apparent there. And that humanity is what I often miss when I'm away from Africa for a long time. So I think those are two things which we can really learn from the African church and from Africa itself. No?
Father Francis, this is inspirational stuff. Thank you for all that you've shared with us, but thank you also for your ministry. I mean, it's incarnational. It reflects the humanity of Christ as well as his divinity. And you're continuing to prepare others for the mission field, for ordination, and you still visit Kenya several months a year to make an impact there. Can I just say a huge thank you from so many of us, and please know that we'll be praying for you and the mission of the community of St. Paul the Apostle. Thank you, Father Francis.
Thank you, Miles. Thank you all for your invitation too. Thank you.
Thank you.
God bless you.